more peculiar doctrines of the Jehovah's Witnesses is the idea that not all Christians are part of the new covenant. In one article, the Watchtower put it this way: Jesus became the mediator of a new covenant between God and a select group of men. Now, of course, in modern day, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that this select group of men is the elite anointed within their organization. However, this idea that not all Christians are in the new covenant is tragically flawed and unbiblical, and let me give you 5 reasons why. Number 1. While the number 144,000 is used twice in Scripture, the number is never used to limit the number of those who are invited to enter the new covenant. Number 2. The new covenant replaces the old covenant, which was open to millions. All faithful Jews partook in the old covenant. When God instituted the new covenant, he didn't shrink the number of those who may enter it. He expanded it by opening it up and including the Gentiles along with the Jews. The new covenant is open to all who would receive Jesus by faith. As the scriptures say, yet to all those who received him, to those who believed in his name, Jesus that is, he gave the right to become children of God. Number 3. The concept of covenant blessings flowing to those outside of the covenant is absolutely foreign to the New Testament, which explains the new covenant in detail. In fact, quite the opposite is true. Speaking of a time when the Gentiles were not in covenant relationship with God, Paul says, "Remember that at that time you were separate from Christ, excluded from citizenship in Israel, and foreigners to the covenant of the promise, without hope and without God in the world." The only life that exists outside of a covenant relationship with God is one that is hopeless and without God. And reason number 4 explains why. Outside the covenant, there is no forgiveness for sin. In Matthew chapter 27, Jesus offers the cup and says, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." The old covenant and the new are both arrangements instituted by God to reconcile a sinful and alienated humanity to himself by forgiving their sins through the shedding of blood. To know that this covenant exists and yet willfully refuse to take the cup, that is to refuse to enter the covenant, is spiritual suicide. And finally, being God's people is defined by being in a covenant relationship with him. Speaking of the new covenant to come, Yahweh told Jeremiah, "This is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After that time, declares Yahweh, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will man teach his neighbor or a man his brother, saying, 'Know Yahweh,' because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares Yahweh, for I will forgive their wickedness, and I will remember their sins no more." If you're not in the covenant, you're not one of God's people, and you remain lost in sin with no way to pay your debt. So next time a Jehovah's Witness knocks on your door, point out to them in love that the scriptures teach that if you are not in a covenant relationship with God, you cannot be his people. You're without hope and you're without God.